Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. And this midweek episode of Rate My Dungeon, we're going to Upper Blackrock Spire, the older brother, essentially, of last week's Lower Blackrock Spire. Upper Blackrock Spire is a very unique dungeon in terms of it was half or a quarter of the Blackrock Spire as a whole as a dungeon, but instead of it being a 5-man dungeon, you actually had to take 10 people in when it was first introduced back in vanilla World of Warcraft. So you needed 2 healers, 2 tanks, and the rest DPS, 6 DPS. I'm pretty sure that adds up to 10. But essentially, yeah, it was a small mega dungeon is the best way to do it, or best way to describe it. And essentially, you couldn't do this 5-man. You could, but you'd have to be like very good geared, and no one was that good a geared when you were going into this instance. You wanted to get your best in slot gear before raid for this instance, so it made no sense in going in it at the end of vanilla World of Warcraft. Plus, not to mention, everyone back in 2005-ish had, not as technically advanced PCs, internet was still on dial-up for the most part, that kind of thing. So, that's where it kind of got a bit tough with gearing in World of Warcraft, and everyone was new to the game as well, don't forget that. So Upper Blackrock Spire is a kind of the first mega dungeon, we'll say. It isn't a long dungeon, but it is a dungeon that has different unique things to it. So we have 7 bosses in total, 8 if you include Jed, who is a rare, and I will always remember that name because he dropped best in slot trinket for casters back in the day. The layout of the dungeon is very simple. You're following a very direct path. There's a couple, sort of things that you can go off and wander around and have a look at, but essentially the layout is very simple. The gear in there is very good. It is some of the best endgame content for vanilla World of Warcraft. You have the Dao Rens, which are a pair of one-handed weapons, which are very good for all melee and physical classes. You have the trinket, like I said, the caster trinket from Jed. You have a couple other things such as tier sets, good shield, trinkets and stuff that are possibly from the last bosses, etc. All of them are very, very good and best in slot before you head into raid instance. Now, did it get a revamp in Cataclysm? No, it didn't. It was actually one of the higher level dungeons in World of Warcraft Classic. Didn't necessarily get a very much in terms of their layout change, but I think Upper Blackrock Spire is very much a different kind of thing because, like I said last week, it's connected to Lower Blackrock Spire, so you can see it from Upper Blackrock Spire. So changing one would mean you have to change the other, and you'd have to be able to change the entire layout of it. And they obviously did it for multiple dungeons, but they were single dungeons. You're having to change the layout so that it works both ways. You can see up to Upper Blackrock Spire from Lower Blackrock Spire and vice versa. So that's kind of where the difficulty would lie, I would imagine, in revamping something like that. Plus, it wasn't overly bad. It was a very reasonable, dungeon, in my opinion. It wasn't too long, like certain things, like maybe Gnomragon or Maradon. It wasn't complicated, like Wailing Caverns or Gnomragon again. And it was it was very good in terms of the gear that it gave. It didn't need anything tuning. It didn't need the bosses changed. It was very solid indeed. So, what would I give it out of 10? In all honesty, it's a weird one because it's technically a 10-man raid. It's kind of Karazhan before Karazhan. Essentially, it's very weird. That's probably where they got the idea for 10 and 25-man raiding, because Upper Blackrock Spire was, in my opinion, deemed as one of the decent dungeons of the time of vanilla. So it kind of makes sense that they took that test and be like, oh, let's just apply it to 10-man instances and stuff like that. And you can still have 10-man raids now, I'm pretty sure. You can, even though the optimal is 14. 2 tanks, 3 healers, and then the rest something like that. But essentially, you can have a 10-man raid, and it made it a lot more viable for smaller guilds and stuff to run. So I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10 in all honesty, it was very, very good and very consistent. But the only problem is you had to get a key for it, which meant that you had to go into lower Blackrock Spire, do a quest chain, etc., etc. So that's kind of where the problems arose with it, that you had to attune for it. And that's the problem with most things. You have to attune for them. People who are casuals can't just walk into the dungeon immediately. It's like, oh no, you got to do this before. And it's like, oh, really? Okay, so you spend a few days before doing quests whenever you get your hour on World of Warcraft. And then you go into Upper Blackrock Spire, but at the time that you want to do it, there's no point because you've got raid or you can't get the people together, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where its downfall was, that you needed to attune for it. But I'm pretty sure they took that out like later on. I can't quite remember. They definitely took it out in like retail. It's not a thing anymore. And I think in Wrath of the Lich King it might not be a thing, but I'm pretty sure still in like Classic, when it was Classic, you did need it, which is a bit of a shame. So a good 7 out of 10. Very solid dungeon choice. I'd very much recommend it. I'm not sure if you need 5-man for it now. For like retail WoW, but I'm pretty sure it is still 5-man. If you get a chance, you definitely should try it on even Season of Mastery or something, because you want to try this dungeon. It is very good. It is very fun, and having a 10-man instance group is actually kind of enjoyable. I'm not going to lie. So thank you all very much for listening. As always, check out the Patreon for ad-free content, as well as the Twitch and YouTube constant stuff happening over there. Thank you all very much for listening. Happy New Year, and go Valor Friend. Goodbye all.